they both studied physics. And, grandma in the 40s studying physics was really unusual. She couldn't actually get a job except teaching high school physics. And when they ultimately were out in Nevada, they didn't believe that Harvard, or excuse me, that Radcliffe was an actual accredited institution because it was small enough at the time where her transcript was written by hand. I mean, so just
Whoa.
it says a lot for like how far we've come. But no, Grandpa ultimately got his PhD in physics. Grandma would have, but by then they had 4 kids, and once again, the times she wouldn't have been allowed to be in a program. He worked for NASA in the very, very early days, pre-manned space flight. There were a number of missions, but the one that always we'll go back to is something called Pioneer 5, which was the first flyby of Venus, and actually discovered the solar wind, which was a weird circling back around because ultimately my PhD work related to that. And I hadn't actually made the connection until long after I finished my graduate work. He helped design the first nuclear rocket, which frankly we still haven't
Wow.
used. Probably a good thing. But again, I have pictures of all this stuff. And ultimately, I think he worked at Area 51, which we've never confirmed exactly, but the circumstantial evidence is just lines up a little too well. And he was very clearly involved with top secret aircraft design, like the SR-71. I know he knew about before it was made public. But anyway, so that's the history that I came from on that side. And so, between my grandparents, physics was always interesting. And the idea of physics differentiating from astrophysics was never something. I mean, I remember him explaining what I ultimately now know is general relativity when I was about 7. And I just
Wow.
found it fascinating. It's not actually, again, it's not actually a hard explanation, but it's just so yeah. So I'd always been interested, and it was just I never thought about not studying it in college. But as far as like the actually being an astrophysicist, that was my undergrad and ultimately my graduate degrees.